Hello and welcome to the Chop Shop. My name is Dion Tucker. I want to thank all of you for tuning into this episode of the Black Trombone Chronicles, where I'm absolutely honored to have one of my heroes here with me, the great George Bohanon. For those of you that don't know George, you're going to learn some true jazz history today. From Motown sessions to LA recordings to just about everything. George has been a part of the history and the lineage of jazz trombone. And we are going to find and learn so much from him today. So without further ado, Mr. Bohanon, how are you doing today, sir?
Oh, Dion, I'm doing wonderful. Wonderful. This is really nice. I'm glad to be with you today.
It's a true pleasure to have you. I was not exaggerating when I said you're truly one of my heroes. I think the first trombone blues solo I learned was your solo. So
Really?
yes. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that, as we get into the interview. But man, it's just such an honor for you to be here today. So thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your experiences with us. I thank you a lot.
Well, I thank you. Like I said, it's nice to be thought of. There's a lot of good trombone players out there, and I've been very fortunate to be doing this pretty much all my life. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So if you could start a little bit and tell me, how did this whole journey start with you? How did you get into playing music and how'd you wind up picking up the trombone?
Well, I, initially I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, which is a very musical town, as everybody in music realizes. You know, you're exposed to so much music, but I wasn't from a musical family. We were from a family who were very much into the church. You
Hmm.
know, we went to church a lot, but we didn't have a choir and all. We had community singing. Like we'd all do songs together and all. And I guess growing up in that environment, I was always fascinated by the music. Now after music, I was ready to go home. You know,
You're not the only.
I already had the word. You know,
Yeah, right. Hey, a lot of black people go to church for the music. you know?
I'd be fired up. But I was just a kid. I was 8 years
Yeah.
old, and our church, as I said, didn't have all of the choirs and things. But I had a good friend who, uh, neighbor, and actually he was one of my best friends, and went to another church, and he uh, said, "Man, you got to come by my church, man. We got all kind of music. We got horns. We got." I said, "What?"
Mm, mm,
And I was between 8 and 9 years old. My
mm.
mother did allow me to go over to uh, David's church, and I went into this church, and they had two trombone players, saxophone player,
Wow.
and a regular rhythm section.
Wow.
And man, halfway through that service, the spirit was so high.
Mm.
I was wiped out, man. I just, I didn't know what was happening to me, really. It
Wow.
was almost
Wow.
like an out of body experience. And
Wow.
I knew, I mean, I started crying and everything.
Hmm.
It was really emotional.
Mm.
And something happened that day that lasted the rest of my life. I
Wow.
knew I had to do that. I was chosen to play the trombone.
Hmm.
And but I didn't knew who knew that I would hold on to it. But that trombone hit me that day. I cried. I came home telling my dad, "Man, I want one of those horns, man. I saw these horns. These guys were pumping these horns. They're
Yeah.
pumping.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can pump."
Yeah.
And it was funny. My dad, we were very humble, had very humble beginnings, but not to say that we were poor, because we had everything we needed,
Yeah.
but we didn't know poor. I had to learn
Yeah.
that I was poor.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
he was a working man who had a minimum, or probably made minimal wage, and but he was a great man, and he took care of his family, and we had everything we needed. But now I remember a conversation going on because I wanted a trombone. I'm begging now. Yeah, pride is gone.
Right.
Then I gotta have one of those horns. I gotta have one. He said, "Yeah, okay." He's listening, but then I hear a conversation in the kitchen one day, and he said, "Well, honey," he called my wife honey. Honey, when that boy keeps saying about that horn, he really wants trombone. I heard mama say, "Look, I don't know nothing about that horn, but I know we need sort of linoleum for the kitchen floor."
Oh,
Oh, and
man.
I said, "Oh, no, I didn't do that." But it worked out eventually. One day, several days later, maybe months, I don't know. But I'm out on the sidewalk playing, and I see Dad get off the bus, and he's got his lunch pail in his hand, and he's carrying something kind of like under the arm here, and it's hanging down. And I'm looking, and as he gets closer, I can see the outline of a trombone case, man.
Oh, wow.
Oh God, that was the most wonderful experience of my life.
Wow.
And I started then to play the trombone, teaching myself. By the way, I'm self-taught. I taught
Yeah.
myself how to play the trombone. I really wanted it. There was I got the guy in the church, that church that I went to, named David Akins, who was a trombone player and a drummer. He taught me about buzzing. And that was my lesson.
Wow.
I ran with it from there. I didn't know anything about reading or writing. I didn't know any of that, but I got the Arbenz book and started at page 1.
Wow. Wow.
And I just taught myself, but I started practicing with, as I grew, got a little older, I tuned into some of the jazz guys there because they weren't that many. Curtis Fuller was just ahead of me. He was about 3 years older than I am, but we were friends, because I just loved the trombone, and he was the cat.
Wow.
And we used to trade off at certain clubs. There are clubs in Detroit that used to hire us all the time, named Levert's Lounge. And, Bert, he'd have me for a weekend, and he'd say, "Man, Curtis killed him. I don't know how you're going to make it this week." And Curtis, man, I'd raring to go. Curtis tell me, "Yeah, man, Levert told me you killed him, man." I don't know.
Smart promoter.
Beautiful brother, man. And that kept us going. And I developed with the Detroit jazz scene and the entire music scene. That was the thing. It wasn't just a trombone playing jazz. I began to listen to all the other music. The gospel was really heavy with them in my spirit, because that was my introduction, And you can tell me when to take a breath, okay?
No. I'm with you. So we just going. I'm with you.
Because as things develop, as I begin to get a better hold of the trombone, and then we always had things in the neighborhood. I lived right around the corner from the Bluebird Inn, which was the main jazz spot during that time. And I wasn't old enough to get in, but I could walk by and hear music every night, every evening, hear them rehearsing. And some of the club owners would let me, like I said, not being old, I'd go in and sit in the kitchen on a box and listen. I heard a lot of wonderful music head on then. And that's when I began to say, yeah, I really want to do this. I really want to do this. But I didn't know how I could do it and make a living. Because most of the guys that I knew were doing that, and they had a day gig. Maybe they work in the factory, because we had those plants there, or tool and die shops and things like that. And then, but there was a lot of good musicians. I don't know if you know Bernard McKinney, Chianti. He played euphonium. He was a beautiful trombone player. That sound That influenced me a lot. Even guys like Frank Rosolino, he was there.
Wow.
He had a whole nother kind of sound, you know.
Right, right.
And then just walking back and forth to school, you know, in those days, you pass a club, a bar or something, the jukebox is blasting and you're hearing the bands, you know, and it was music. There was music everywhere.
Wow.
And so Detroit was a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up.
Wow.
Even way before Motown.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow, that's incredible. So, a lot of the people that I've interviewed are younger than you, and a lot of us learn how to play in school. You know, the first time I was exposed to the trombone was in school. Was getting were band programs very popular back then in school, or was it something more that you learned outside of school?
Well, we had bands. Matter of fact, we had marching bands, we had orchestras, we had certainly we had jazz ensembles. I mean, when I got to high school, that is. But now, all this is prior to high school. But I mean, what I'm saying, when I got to high school, that's when I really got turned on to different bands, different kinds of band. I didn't play in the marching band, but I played in the jazz band and did a little playing in the orchestra. So then I got turned on to some of the classical pieces and all. And then growing up, even reading, it's hard for me to tie all this together because we're going back to I graduated from high school in 1954.
Wow.
You know, yeah. Wow. So I'm 83 years old. Right?
Yes.
So, but yes, we had music in school. That was the great thing. We did have music, but I remember when there was an incident in high school. There were guys who played the trombone really, really pretty good. I still was teaching myself to play. I didn't have a real teacher because I had a guy that told me, you know, he, like I said, told me how to buzz. A guy was teaching me that there were alternate positions, stuff like that, but no theory, no real. I didn't know much about the trombone. I just knew that I had a good ear. Yeah. If I heard it, I could play it. And so I relied upon that, and it works. You know, it worked well actually, because I got to the point where guys were calling me just to come be a part of their band. Just got out of high school. You know, I worked Jimmy Wilkins, who was Ernie Wilkins' brother, had big band. And we had a lot of the bassy tunes before bass.
Wow.
Wow. Like checking them out. And so it was a great experience with the big band thing. And I found myself really, as things moved on, the guys were calling me to play in different kinds of things, you know, because the guys with the big bands, and then small group stuff. The guys started popping up, one a trombone player and a quintet. And Kenny Cox, wonderful young piano player, Teddy Harris. These guys were in Detroit, and these are the guys when the guys from New York came to Detroit, they knew these people. You know, because they were doing it right. They were playing the music. And we were learning the tunes from the masters, from the guys who did it. We didn't have any real books. You know, and so we just had to sit and listen till we get it right, and play it over and over till we had it right. And so I began to learn a lot of music, and it was a group of guys: piano player Hugh Lawson, and Frank Gant, drummer. You probably know these names because they almost did very well. But these guys, they had a duo, just drums and piano. And that was at a place just around the corner from my house too. It's called the Nakarima Club, which was American spelled backwards.
Wow. Okay.
Nakarima, and they just played a couple of times a week. They had a duo playing there. And I would stop there just to listen And man, those guys would not let me sit in the chair. Get your horn, man. Come on up here. Oh man, I mean, get your
Yes.
horn. Man, they were so wonderful because I learned playing in all kind of keys and different
Hmm.
standards and all from Hugh Lawson, wonderful
Yeah.
piano player.
Wow.
And then Lewis Hayes, he was growing up with us, and we used to go and practice at Lewis's basement. It was,
Wow.
and that was a fun thing. Kurt Lightsey,
Yeah.
he was just coming out of high school. We all played. Kurt would follow up on the classical end. We played some, all kinds of classical pieces together, just trombone and piano, and he adapt them so I could play on the line, and he'd play. We go and play that for the schools, for the school assemblies.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys, man, wonderful bunch of musicians to grow up with, who all spread out and did their thing, and have contributed so much to this music world.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, this is just all like, I'm just, my brain, if you could see my brain right now, you would know, because I mean, this is jazz, this is history right here. It's not just jazz history. This is Black history. This is amazing. The trajectory was obviously different back then. Most people now, they learn in school, they go to college, and then hopefully they continue on to a professional track.
Right.
You sound like you were already on a professional track before you were about to graduate high school. So when it was time, so when you graduated high school, did you kind of go straight into working professional and working with some of the people around town?
Well, yes, I did. Yeah, I'll sound like I'm name dropping, but I am.
No, but this is your history, so that's why I'm like, my brain is freaking out right now.
Well, and you have to excuse me, because when you're triggering some things that I have to really think about, and also my recall isn't like chronologically in order. You
That's
pick.
fine.
So I'm glad you're throwing these things out,
Yeah.
because after school, one of the things I did, I was a part of a small group. We had a vocal and instrumental group. We call it the Premiers.
Okay.
Now, you've heard of the Premiers or not?
I have it.
The Premiers, we had like a Wurlitzer piano that was built up on a stand for the piano player. And we were, we had upright bass, cocktail drums, drum, bass drum on the bottom, and trombone. And it was like the Four Freshmen kind of a thing.
Wow.
All African American people,
Yeah, yeah.
We were singing tunes, and then we ended some light classical stuff, singing quartet, and then I jumped back and did a solo. Was really. But the piano player was Alice McLeod, who was Alice Coltrane.
Wow. Come on, man.
And so we tried. That's going to carry me someplace else.
Let's go.
That I even had a chance to leave the city of Detroit and go to another place playing my music. And that was the time a guy came through Detroit, heard our band, and he was excited. He was rubbing his hands like this. Oh, yeah. I know why he was excited.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And anyway, he said, "Man, you guys are great." He said, "Look, I live in Florida. I got work down there for you." Blah blah. He sold us a great thing. I said, "Wow, Florida, huh? Well, that's not too bad. We can make it there from Detroit. We can get back." Yeah.
Right.
But so we did. The Premiers. We went to Florida, and that was 1957. Yeah, 1957. So here we go, a bunch of people from Detroit go down there, and he did have a couple of nights at a place called the Sir John Hotel in the lounge there.
Do you remember what part of Florida you were in?
We were in Miami.
In Miami, okay.
We were in Liberty City.
Okay. I grew up in Miami, so that's why I wanted to.
You know Liberty City?
Yep, I know Liberty City.
We're in Liberty City, and I woke up and then was staying at the Sir John Hotel there, and we happened to get a gig for a couple of days at the Beachcomber on Miami Beach. Okay. And we were back. We were like in the lounge there for a few days with Lonnie Satin, the singer, and Sally Blair. You probably have to zoom these names, but
I will.
Very popular during that era. And okay, so we had a couple of nice gigs, but then it ended, and we're out there now. We'd already stretched ourselves and bought us a little station wagon so we could, put all in. We drove to Florida, first of all. But then as we started getting more into Florida there in a couple of weeks, we started seeing these cross burnings. I said, what is that? That was another kind of awakening, really, where we were moving kind of into too close to reality.
Yeah.
And that was a really shocking thing to me because, I'm like 17, 18 years old, man. And I said, what is this? Yeah. Just came out here to play some music, man.
Yeah.
All of that. And we're in Liberty City, which is it was really strange during that time. But man, it's so wonderful because I knew I must have been on the right path because things continued to evolve and work out. Even that negative thing became such a positive thing because we ended up, the whole group stayed at a family's house there in Liberty City, a guy named Jack Brown, who was the head of he was an operator of the one motion picture theater they had. And he brought us home and to his family, and he said, look, you guys are good. Practice, you'll do fine. His wife cooked Sunday dinners for us every day.
Wow.
And we didn't have any money.
Wow.
We didn't have any money. We couldn't even fill up that station wagon to get back to Detroit.
Wow.
But as it worked out, we did, get a few gigs here and there. I don't know what happened to the guy who brought us over. but the thing is, another thing happened with him. That's another part of the story because we bought the station wagon and got back home. But getting there, I told you, see, these things are coming clear now. We met this guy who had all this work for us. And he said, well, look, I got a car. You all can drive it back to Florida and no problem. And I'll have a place for you to stay, which he did for a few days. But he had bought a new 1956 or 7 Lincoln Premier. And we'll call the Premiers. And he said, listen, this car, Premier, is you.
Right.
This brother had come to Detroit to buy a car and tried to drive it home. We did.
Oh, man. This cat was a hustler.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But as it worked out throughout that whole Liberty City that's crossed the river, we met the Browns. They treated us royally. They recognized our music. And as I say, we did get enough monies to get the station wagon to drive back home. That's how the station wagon came in.
Wow.
And, but Alice, she was a wonderful player, and we had arrangements, beautiful arrangements. We were singing tunes, like I said, even some light classic like Anastasia. Anastasia, da 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 da, and tunes. People looking at these. Who are these coons?
Oh gosh!
But it was a wonderful experience. Because then I knew And then, you know, I was introduced to real life because in
Yeah.
Detroit, you know, I went to a mixed school.
Hmm.
You know, we had all kinds of people in our
Hmm.
class. We didn't
Yeah.
think about
Yeah. Yeah.
the racism, and we had friends. And so these things had to be taught, you know, that
Yeah.
there is heavy racism going
Mm.
on, and
Yeah.
it still exists, and it's going
Yeah.
to exist.
Yeah.
You learn how to work through it to your own advantage, and I
Hmm.
had to do that.
Yeah. And this is so interesting because I was born in Boston, but I moved to Miami when I was like 9 or 10, somewhere in there. So
Mhm.
growing up in Miami, this is like early 90s or so, very liberal place. In my neighborhood, one my
Mhm.
neighbor was Spanish, one neighbor was white. You know, it was a very liberal thing. Well, the first time I traveled to Central Florida, like Tampa, the first time I left Miami, I was like, this is a different state. I didn't feel like I was in. Now, it's the most southern place in the country, but Miami is not like a Georgia or a South Carolina as far as how the people were that I knew. But once you go about an hour or two north, it's
Mhm.
pretty much what you described. So
Wow.
it was kind of shocking to me to see that. I hadn't experienced too much racism as a young man, but as I started to move north in the state a little bit, I was like, wow, this is drastically different.
Yeah.
And like the same thing, you when you said you didn't really see it so much, like growing up, and it didn't affect you until you see it, then it was like eye-opening. I can fully understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it was frightening too because
Yeah,
we were so naive. We're just young people, you know, just
yeah.
out of high school. So the couple of guys were older in the band, and they weren't real serious musicians. But one guy, you know, he played the upright bass fairly well, and his brother played the cocktail drum. But they were interested in the vocal side, you know,
Hmm.
which was a good thing for me anyway, because learning lyrics made me play better. you know, I,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
a tune had lyrics, even now, if it has lyrics, let me see what it's talking about.
Yeah.
It gives me a little something to play on. And,
Yeah, man, that was my first trombone lesson that I got from Benny Powell. When
hey,
I
oh man, oh, man.
that's that man, that was my first trombone teacher when I moved to New York. And I went straight to him. Like straight away I went to him, and he said if you don't know the lyrics to the song, then you're just playing changes. He's like, you don't know the song if you don't know the lyrics. And I was like, you're young. You're like, no, I know the song. I know it goes to the 2, it goes to the 5, like,
Right.
And so later on, and this is like many years later, I was playing I think it was either a session or a recording or something with a vocalist, and they
Mhm.
called the song that I knew, but
Yeah.
it was in a whole nother key than
Oh,
I was used to playing it. And I didn't really think too much about it. I just sang the lyrics in my head and I played it. And I was like, and then at that second, I was like, that's what Uncle Benny was talking about.
yeah, exactly. Benny, man, I love that brother. Let me tell you, every time I went to New York, Benny, I stayed with Benny. I stayed in this
Mm,
apartment. You know, he always made me stay there if he knew I was
hmm.
staying. Wonderful brother, man. I
Yes.
love Benny Powell. I
Yes.
hated to lose him. And he
Yeah.
stayed when he was in town here. He would come see us too.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he's the
Yeah.
best. He's the
He is the best, and I'm fortunate at this time in my house right now. I have about 6 or 7 boxes of his memorabilia and things. There's a sax player named TK Blue that was very close to him,
best.
and he got all of his stuff when Benny passed. It was such a sudden and unexpected thing that they went to his place and they were going to throw all of his stuff out. His piano and everything. So TK had his wife go by and salvage all these things. It was in his storage for a long time. And a few months ago, he contacted me saying, hey, I know you were close with Benny. Would you like to get some of his stuff? Absolutely. I went by, I took whatever he had, and I started going through some of this stuff. And it is, I mean, Benny was, they have Facebook now and you
Right.
document your life. Benny was before Facebook, he
Yeah.
was documenting his life. There is so many things that I have newspaper cutouts from 1957. I got like tapes of him taking French lessons, just all kinds of stuff. And I was like, this cat was way ahead of his time, in thinking about documenting his life. At some point, I'm going to share that with people.
Wonderful brother, man. I love him. I love him. You hit a nerve when you say BP.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And taught. Yeah, he taught me so many things about hustling. He took me out to dinner one day after a lesson, and there was a bus that drove by, and it had an advertisement for like a show or something, like a Broadway show or something like that. And he said, back in the day, we would follow that bus and find out where it was stopping, what theater it was stopping at. And at that point, we would go to the theater and ask, hey, do you need musicians for anything? They were that hungry. So when I hear these young players like, did you do such and such? I was like, no, you didn't follow a bus. Like, you're not doing enough. Oh, man. Yeah. So let me ask you, so was Detroit always kind of the jump off, or was it the jump off point for you to start traveling with different groups and traveling the country some more and seeing different parts of the world? Really, was Detroit kind of home base for you, and then you started going other places? And what was that like? Who was some of the first, after this Florida trip, as you start your professional career a little more, who were some of the first groups that you traveled with that you remember?
Well, the first known group that I traveled was Chico Hamilton. Chico heard me and Charles Lloyd. And that was in 1962. Chico came through the town. Here again, I'm playing with Motown there, so I'm pretty good. I got some income happening,
Okay.
And I had a little gig at this hotel where they stayed. Now it was Sonny Wilson's hotel, but I played down in what they call the Swamp Room.
Okay.
We had a quartet down there, and Charles Lloyd heard the music, came down, and he told Chico about me. And Chico came, and then I went with Chico. I stayed with them for 2 years. And Chico with Charles Lloyd and Gabor Szabo, myself, and Albert Stinson on bass. Wow. And we traveled. That was my first time coming to California.
Okay.
Chico was living here then in Los Angeles. And so, that started me. That was got me out of Detroit. But this funny thing was another thing happened almost that same week, that same month, was that, Cedar Walton and the groups all come through Detroit. They knew me now. They Curtis and Bohanon. Okay. So, and so Cedar was with the Jazz Tech, Art Farmer, Benny Golson's group, and they would trade. They're going to change trombones and all, and they would change the groups all together. So this particular time, this is a funny story. I'm trying to make it quick.
Take your time.
They heard about me, so Cedar recommended that I come to an audition. Well, the same day, Roy McCurdy was coming up from Rochester. He's coming to New York. And we were meeting at Birdland with Benny Golson. And I was so excited. And finally, I'm going to get a chance to get into the New York scene, looks like.
Right.
So I go out there, and the first tune we played, Benny said, well, let's just do Five Spot After Dark. I say, oh, yeah, we play that all the time in Detroit. And I said, hey, we'll kick it off at 1, 2, 3. And man, something's happening with my horn. I'm not, it's not blending. And so finally, we stopped the tune, and the guys are kind of sniggling a little bit. And I'm sweating, man. What's
Right.
happening? Well, in Detroit, we always played that in C minor. Benny wrote it in B minor.
Wow.